Oh, Colts Nation, my goodness. Are you feeling that right now? Do you feel it? I'm really asking. Do you feel it? That right there, that uncomfortable, nervous energy in the pit of your stomach going into this game against the Raiders, it's what they call the calm before the storm. And it is that weird part of the season where you would think that everything going well, at least as per the expectation for these Indianapolis Colts, that all of us would just be so incredibly excited about everything going on. Yet for some reason, I just have like this super nervous feeling about this team. And I'm kind of getting the sense based off of what I'm seeing online that nervous energy is radiating all across of Colts Nation. And listen, I can totally understand it, right? Because tomorrow, I guess whenever it is that you're watching the video, December 31st, week 17 against the Las Vegas Raiders, shit is about to hit the fan for these Indianapolis Colts. And I have always been emotionally invested in this team for as long as I could possibly remember. Obviously, for me, to have a full-time job elsewhere, be in my bedroom and do the whole thing to start the channel, obviously, I'm emotionally invested in the team. You can't be doing this and not be emotionally invested, but particularly since I've started the channel, it has been taken up another notch. And sometimes on Sunday, with the games that these guys play, the Cardiac Colts, I mean, the emotional roller coaster that I feel like I am on any given Sunday with this team, I am exhausted come 4:30 sometimes. I mean, it is something very, very serious. And another one, or rather, we're in for another one against the Raiders. And here's the reality of the situation that we're in right now. Whether you guys want to believe it or not, I know some of you want to make the distinction. The nerds want to make the distinction, right? But if the Colts win out, they're going to make the playoffs, okay? Now, technically, for the nerds, there's a 96% chance that they make it. And for the sake of being thorough and for the sake of being fair to you guys and your weird worries, I'm going to explain that scenario right now. So the scenario in which the Colts win out, meaning beat the Raiders this week and beat the Texans next week, they do those two things and still don't make the playoffs, this is what would have to happen. The Jaguars would have to beat Carolina and Tennessee to end the season. The Bills would have to beat New England and Miami to end the season. The Bengals would have to beat Kansas City and Cleveland, both, which I also view as the most unlikely of these scenarios, to end the season. If all of those things happened, the only way the Colts would make the playoffs is if the Steelers were to win each of their last two games against Seattle and Baltimore. The reason for that is because the Colts do not have the head-to-head tiebreaker with the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, we saw what we saw in that game. It wasn't great. However, if there are three or more teams with a tied record and they need to go for a tiebreaker, they don't do head-to-head in the NFL. They do conference records. So if all those things happen, but or rather some fucking shit. You see what I'm saying? Right? This is ridiculous. If all of those things happened, the Colts would still be 8-4 with a 2-0 finish against the AFC, which would be better than the Bills, the Bengals, the Steelers, and let's say the Dolphins if they were to lose out, right? So that is what has to happen for the Colts to miss the playoffs if they were to win out. Now, hopefully that made some semblance of sense. But do you get my point why I say they're just guaranteed to be in if they win? If you invite me to your New Year's Eve's party, right? And I said, yeah, dude, I'm coming. The only way I'm not showing up is if my cat dies, my car breaks down, my mom is like, in a car. Did you get my point though, right? Like it's one of these things. I'm coming to the party. That's what I'm trying to say about the Colts, man. If they win out, they're going to make it. And if that is not true, fine. That still has to be the mentality, right? And it starts against the Raiders. And Antonio Pierce's Raiders are really a dope story. This is now the second time the Raiders have had an interim coach that you could end up arguing probably should be the guy they hire. We'll see if they do that. But of course, it's Colt podcast, so this is really not the point of the discussion. But this is a team in the Raiders right now playing with pride and energy. And that's a very dangerous combination for the Colts if they do not come ready to play. This Raiders team, if you allow them to, is going to outwork you. They're going to out-tough you. They're going to be more violent than you. All of these things, right? And quite frankly, that is something that Colts fans have seen happen to this team before. And one of the things I'm starting to see around on the internet's a little stretch right here. Oh, goodness. One of the things I'm starting to see are people drawing parallels to the 2021 season with Carson Wentz? And I will grant you this. There is a similarity in the sense that the last 2 weeks are against, one, the Raiders, right? And two, to end the season, a divisional rival, right? I believe in 2021 it was at Jacksonville in a game that we all remember. And then this year will be at home in Lucas Oil against the Texans, right? But other than that, I do feel these seasons are quite a bit different because do keep in mind, and I promise, I'm going to get to the Raiders preview. You've been here before, right? Most of you guys have been here before, so you know it's time-stamped. I'll get there. I'm riffing for you. Come on, I haven't made an episode in a while. You know I had to bullshit a little bit, right? But the seasons are different. I lost train of thought because I felt the need to explain myself to you. How silly is that? So the Colts were fully loaded going in to that 2021 stretch, right? There was a stretch of that season where the Colts were considered to be dark horse Super Bowl contenders. Keep in mind, going into those last 2 games, at least in terms of the roster they had assembled, going into that season, they had everyone healthy. They had Carson Wentz was their quarterback, Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, Kenny Moore, right? The list goes on and on. I don't have to keep playing the name game. You get my point. The Colts were locked and loaded going into there. They screwed it up. This year, on the other hand, has been the complete opposite. I mean, the amount of adversity this team has faced, strictly from a player availability standpoint. I mean, if you want to open that discussion up even wider, you can. But just in terms of all the missed games we've had out of Jonathan Taylor, Grover Stewart suspension, Anthony Richardson goes without saying, the amount of corners we did not have on this team. The line's been rotating in and out on a couple of occasions throughout the course of the season. The list goes on and on in terms of things this Colts team has had to overcome from a personnel standpoint. There is nobody at all, despite the fact that the Colts have been in the playoffs, not in the picture, in the playoffs. They've been there for what, like a month now? I'm going to tell you right now, the rest of the league, the rest of the fans, they don't even know. They don't respect it. Here's a story right now. Last week on Sunday, I play in a flag football league. For those of you who don't know, yes, I am the quarterback. No big deal. Big brain, football mind coming at you all the time. That is what it is. But we're practicing on a Sunday morning, obviously football Sunday. This was Christmas Eve. And I tell the boys that I got to get out a little bit early because the Colts are on at 1. Got to make sure I'm home for that game so I could come to you guys and make sure I'm watching every single play. I'm very thorough when I come on here and make sure that I don't make a fool out of myself when I talk about the game to the best of my ability. But I tell them, I got to go watch the Colts play the Falcons. There's a lot on the line. You got a dude there who knows a lot about football. Isn't some idiot, okay? Kid knows a bit about the game. Looks at me and says, hey, bro, who cares about the Colts, right? And I said, who cares? I said, what are you talking about? The Colts are in the playoffs, dude. The playoffs are on the line. He said, hey, Colts ain't going to do shit. And I said, bro, the Colts are in the playoffs. You know, this kid had no idea. He had to look it up. He didn't even believe me. They were literally, people have no clue. They're sleeping on the Colts like a bottle of Vicks NyQuil, okay? It's on that level. So don't think for a second that this season is quite the same as 2021. I really think they're almost entirely different, if I'm to be 100% honest with you. But whether or not you even find what I just said powerful or insightful really comes down to whether or not you view that type of context and nuance to be important, right? I think it does. I'm always the type of guy that is going to point out, for example, I'm really trailing off this episode, guys, whatever. People will talk about Chris Ballard. They hate Chris Ballard, and then they talk about, all these years without a divisional title. I'll defend Chris Ballard, and the way I do it is I usually go into the context of each individual season and kind of find some reasons why maybe that was acceptable. Or maybe that was acceptable. And the thing is that I think you guys also think those things matter. And my evidence for that is that you're here listening right now. By the way, go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already, right? I'll save the intro. You don't have to worry about that. And you're here listening, right? We watch the games every week. We care about the injuries. We discuss the Colts. If we did not care about the nuances of the week to week, right? If all these little tiny points didn't matter and it was all just about the end of season record and all those things, then what's even the point of showing up? Why do we even do this, right? Why even care about the games? We could just make one show a year to end the season and then another one to start the season, right? That's all we would have to do. So regardless, let's get away from that for a second because we got to talk about this game against the Raiders. So what we are going to talk about today, of course, is the preview for the game. What I view as important matchups, players, right? Things the Colts need to do to win, whatever it turns into. But I do know within here, there is going to be a little message to Gus Bradley as well. So with that, I'm doing the intro anyway. I have to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts cast. As always, I ask anyone enjoying, go ahead, shoot it a like. Going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. You can subscribe if you like, but most importantly, just enjoy because we are here to talk about the Colts versus the Raiders in perhaps the most important game of the Colts season. Every game from this point on is the most important game. The next is the best, baby. And we could do the injury report if you want, but for what I understand, it's Braden Smith and Michael Pittman looking ready to go. So something about Kenny Moore with his back, we're going to have to find out tomorrow. I don't think it's definitive, but Braden Smith and Michael Pittman, as per Shane Steichen on the 29th, he sounded pretty clear that they were going to play. So we're just going to operate on that. And with that, we'll talk about the offense first because it's less interesting. And then we'll get to my thoughts on really the defensive side of the ball, what I view to be the biggest story of this game. That's going to be less of a breakdown and more of me just fucking, hopefully Gus Bradley listens to the show, right? So here's what it is, right? Offensively, the Raiders defense is damn good right now, okay? And when you have a guy like Antonio Pierce leading the charge, you can tell that's a team where the players are playing for the coach. If you don't know what that means, I suspect maybe you've never played before. I don't mean that to sound condescending. I'm just being honest. You can tell that he has the pulse of that locker room. They're there for Antonio Pierce, and right now, the identity of this Raiders team is the defense. These are the types of things that make a team like them very, very dangerous. High energy, playing together at the right time of the season. But as far as what the Colts need to do something against this defense, I find it very, very simple. The defense goes as Max Crosby goes, period, in my opinion. Jack Jones has been making some plays as of late. I saw a name of another guy that they have that has like 4 picks on the year. That's totally fine. For me, you have to neutralize this pass rush and you have to keep Gardner Minshew clean because the Raiders will not only turn the ball over, I mean, they've scored a fair share of defensive touchdowns this year. I mean, they've really been playing well most of the year defensively, and it's gone under the radar, and it's just been brought to the forefront a little bit with Antonio Pierce. Pittman's presence in all of this, for me, it is really key because the way, and Josh Downs we love, but we saw last week, Pittman is the glue that holds this passing game together. I think most of us knew that, some of us didn't. The quick passing game is going to be very, very necessary in making sure that Max Crosby doesn't have the time that he needs to get to the quarterback. We're happy to have Braden Smith blocking him as opposed to Blake Freeland. No disrespect to Freeland, but Max Crosby is a dog. I mean, there's not many guys in the league scarier than Max Crosby and what he brings on the defensive side of the ball as a pass rusher, as just a ball of energy. The guy is the absolute real fucking deal. No question about it. But Braden Smith's been on a layoff, and we got to do him some favors, whether that's getting some help from a tight end in the blocking or whatever the hell it is, or just a quick passing game to Michael Pittman. We have to make sure we keep moving the chains here, and we have to make sure we play this game at our pace. Running game, as always, is important. JT, don't you feel like JT's due for a big game? Maybe here against the Raiders. Again, for me, we can't let Max Crosby take this game over. There was a moment in the Bengals game in the beginning where Trey Hendrickson took the game over, and I thought it really changed the trajectory on some levels because I just thought our offense was out of whack after that happens. Max Crosby is able to do the same exact thing. We have to make sure it doesn't happen. For me, it's the running game, yes, but Pittman's presence, I think, brings everything together because I think when Pittman's on the field, the defense has to worry about both things. Without Pittman, I'd imagine the defensive coordinator would look at the Colts and be like, well, okay, there's nothing about the passing game that scares us, which means we just have to scheme them into passing, which the Colts have shown they're very willing to pull off of the running game when the defense is giving them passing looks, right? So let's get the run game going, but most importantly, let's make sure Pittman's involved. I don't anticipate that's going to be an issue. I feel pretty good about that. But again, Max Crosby, you just don't know. Now, defensively, most importantly, in my message to Gus Bradley, listen, I have defended Gus Bradley more, well, I wouldn't say more than anyone, but I certainly haven't dropped the hammer on him, which at this point essentially is a defense. I think I made a video titled around him once and defending him, okay? This is a Raiders team. The season is on the line. As Reggie Wayne so eloquently put, Colts need to check their pulse right here. And I'm talking about Gus Bradley and this defense too, right? They got to check their pulse. They're not supposed to be here right now, as according to the rest of the league, okay? Everything is on the line. You cannot come out and just let this happen to you as the Colts defense, as they do. You cannot just sit back. And I usually advocate for the fact that they don't blitz because I think we struggle in the secondary. I don't think taking people out of coverage is going to help us in coverage, generally speaking. That's just my feeling. But you have a guy in Aiden O'Connell back there, 4th round guy, right? and is a guy in terms of, and mind you, I looked into the quarterbacks deeply this year. For those of you who were following, I actually thought the Raiders, I should have drafted Tanner McGee. I had Tanner McGee as one of the prolific passers in this draft, went 6th round to the Eagles. Wonderful preseason for him. No big deal, neither here nor there. You probably don't know who that is. Don't want to take a victory lap there. Aiden O'Connell, in his starts, this Raiders offense put up 6 points last week and did not complete a pass after the first quarter, all right? They then had a fluke against the Chargers, who folded like a lawn chair when Justin Herbert was no longer gone for the season. There's a damn good argument to be made that defense had an organized effort to sabotage their head coach. I don't know what happened in that game, but that was a fluke of a game by this Raiders offense. So 6 points last week, then that whatever that was, that is 125 points against the Chargers, right? Nothing against the Vikings, 17 against the Chiefs a month ago, 13 against the Dolphins, 16 against the Jets, 30 against the Giants, who are pitiful, and 6 points against the Chicago Bears. That's what his offense has been able to do. I won't add up the numbers and give you the averages, but without a 60-something point effort, they're averaging less than 20 a game. This offense is not very good. Obviously, Davante Adams is a guy you have to respect. He's explosive. Jacoby Meyer, all the same. It's not like there's not pieces here, but really, you don't have Josh Jacobs going into this game if you're the Raiders. And the Colts now, you're just looking at the receivers and a quarterback who has no right being in a position to be taking you out of the playoffs, okay? This right here is not the game for the Colts to play scared or conservative on defense. Again, 4th-round rookie who has not completed a pass since the first quarter of the last game he played. Now, I know they've got talent, which Shane Steichen was so kind to point out that the Raiders have talent on offense, all right? I'm not saying Aiden O'Connell's a bum, but if we allow him to just sit back there and throw the ball up and down the field against the predictable cover 2 defense all freaking day, if the Raiders offense does us dirty in that way, there will be no defense for Gus Bradley, period. Enough is enough in this game. We got to make sure we're getting to this guy. Period. If the line's not going to get it done, this is a day where you got to put the pressure on the kid. You got to make it difficult for Aiden O'Connell in this game. If you do that on paper, there's no reason that the Colts should be losing this game. If they do, it's going to be because this defense allowed the Raiders offense. And when I say allowed, I literally mean sat back and allowed this Raiders offense to do stuff. That's kind of where I'm at. Ultimately, do I think the Colts are going to win this game? Yes, I do. Am I nervous? Fuck yeah. I'm so nervous about this game. And it's in part due to the fact that the defense, I mean, if there's a defense for Davante Adams, I fucking hate to speak this into existence. If Davante Adams is to get 150 yards and 2 touchdowns again at any point this season, this feels like the week it would happen. Do you know what I'm saying? Just my gut feeling from watching the league for a while. For me, if you're Gus Bradley, again, you got to, if the defensive line's not getting it done, you can't sit there and wait all day for it to happen. Aiden O'Connell is not ready to be playing football at this time of the year with a playoff berth on the line, which the Raiders technically are eligible for, okay? He ain't ready for it. And as a defense, you got to make sure that we show that. And that is going to be on Gus Bradley this week. And it's just, that's my message to Gus Bradley. And that's really the pitch of my message here. Unless the offense does something that I just don't anticipate, if we lose this week, it's going to be because the defense allowed the Raiders offense to look better than it is. And that is going to be unacceptable. So that was the episode. Hopefully that was cohesive. Hopefully I wasn't too angry. Hopefully I didn't turn you off. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It's been about, 20 minutes or something like that. Without further ado, we're going to go on here. As for the episode, Monday morning, I'm hosting at my house this is like weird details, but usually the game's right on Sunday at 1 o'clock. I would put something out Monday morning. No shot Monday morning. I'm going to be whatever I'm doing the night before. I'm hosting at the house, maybe a couple drinks, a couple hundred drinks involved in that. Monday morning, not going to happen for the episode. Apologize. Enjoy your New Year's. What sounds a little bit more realistic is perhaps Monday evening, or if not, Tuesday morning. It's going to be one of those two. I will make sure to have the game reaction then. But without further ado, go ahead, like, subscribe if you have not yet. Drop your thoughts on the game. And until next time, you already know what it is, baby. Go Colts.